Hey, good evening. We're back again here on Meteorology Lab, and not much going on in the plains. We're under a big ridge, as a matter of fact, and all we've got is a little bit of cirrus. A lot of times that's an indication of a subtropical jet across this part of the U.S. So we'll take a look at the charts and see if we have anything like that going on. So let's go ahead and move to the charts here. Here's the 250 millibar analysis, and I can draw out that ridge real quick. Kind of a small scale ridge here across Texas, and then a larger scale one covering most of the Great Plains here. Next trough is setting up onshore, right there at San Francisco into Reno, and then up to Spokane, and then the downstream segment coming across the Great Lakes like that. Now we're up at 250 millibars, so this is where we look for evidence of the subtropical jet. And yesterday there was a little bit of an indication of something like that across here. Don't see that so much today, although the flow it's up to about 30 or 35 knots, so there may be a weak one in place here. 500 millibar flow showing, again, most of the stronger flow up in the northern U.S. Got this little mesoscale convective vortex maybe, or a weak low aloft. And we saw that in the charts a few days ago, and it's certainly taken hold, and there it is. So, does the satellite show it? Yes, it does. Now, those charts were for 12Z, and we saw the center of that in this region right here. And it looks like during the day it's drifted off towards the Hays and Russell, Kansas area. So I didn't take a look at the charts last night, but it's possible that that's an old remnant of convection from earlier. Okay. Still got a few high base storms, looks like, over southwest Oklahoma into northwest Texas, and also around the Brady-Brownwood area of central Texas. And then a quick look at the thickness and isobars. And we see a very strong gradient setting up across Utah and Nevada. And let me draw that out real quick. There it is. Looks like it's extending out over the LA area, maybe Orange County, San Diego. And then the warm front section, possibly around Rapid City into western Nebraska here. And maybe a little bit of a tail end of that extending down into the Texas Panhandle, since we were under kind of a high-pressure area yesterday, and you remember we had that upslope flow here in this part of Texas, creating a lot of thunderstorm activity in the Rockies right there. So right now we're just get into a transition period between this ridge and the next system coming in, and the answer to that is going to be in the model forecasts. Showing a pretty good pool of cold air in the Baffin Bay area of Canada right here, 492 decameters. So if there was something that could kick that southward, we'd have a pretty good cold outbreak. Okay, time to look at a few SQTs. For Dallas-Fort Worth, the sounding from about an hour ago showing a little bit of higher humidity entering the column here from the surface up to about maybe 14,000 feet. And there's that cirrus we were seeing on the opening clip. So you can see bases on that about 25,000. Very weak flow from the surface on up to the upper levels. Just a little bit of 40 knot flow here at about 20,000 feet, and then another little area of 50 knots. That's probably the remnants of that subtropical jet. You see that right here. Okay, so going a little further west into Albuquerque, approaching that other storm system, and we see very warm temperatures there. Again, if we extended that down to about 1,000 millibars, we would be in the mid to upper 90s. So definitely a very warm air mass in place there, and you see the high tropopause in place. Then we get a little further west out towards the front. We'll pick out Flagstaff. Very similar to Albuquerque there. We'll go to Las Vegas. Looks like we pick up quite a bit of dry air here, so maybe that's indicative of some subsidence in the mid-levels. And we do see what looks like a little bit of a subsidence inversion at about 14,000 or so. Very warm. If we were able to push that all the way to the surface, we'd have readings up about 105 to 110 degrees. And then we get out to, let's try Oakland in Northern California. Now we see a distinctive contrast to the air mass, and you see a very strong inversion, something like a subsidence inversion, maybe a front. If we worked through some more soundings, we could probably figure that out, but it's topped out there at about 16,000 feet, and that's about as strong as anything that I've seen in California on a sounding there. So very strong contrast to the air mass above. We can look for some consistency by going to Reno there. We see a very similar picture there. So perhaps this is the cold air mass in place. And then we'll go down the coast to Vandenberg. And it looks a little bit shallower there. So that's probably an indication that it is a very deep cold air mass there. And then Orange County area, that should take us down into the shallower air or out into the warm air. And at this point, it's looking a little bit, yeah, I would probably call that a little bit of a cold air mass there. Maybe a bit of marine air moving inland. Okay, so let's take a look at the dynamics. We'll run through these charts real quick. We see the polar front jet moving inland. So our surface front's going to be sitting something like that, maybe a little further south. And that's going to be our next weather maker coming inland. And there's that little vortex there over western Kansas. So that's going to move kind of like northward towards Iowa and Minnesota overnight. This is going to be about midday tomorrow. We find that over Minnesota. And then the next trough out over the west coast, starting to open up and move more towards the Dakotas. Okay, so moving on into the weekend, Saturday and Sunday looks pretty quiet for Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas. Maybe another little disturbance moving across southern Colorado there. But most of the dynamics are going to be affecting Minnesota there, so that'll be the best chances of organized precip. Then into next week, just kind of a zonal flow here. Couple weak waves moving across the western U.S. at the start of the week. And we see that moving into Kansas here around Tuesday. So maybe a chance of thunderstorms going up for the central U.S. right there. And here comes another wave and another one. So things will start to degrade a little bit, and we'll pick up the storm chances, and then we get our next big trough moving in towards the weekend, and there it is right there. So more rain for California, and looks like we're going to start to get some of the stronger flow starting on Thursday night going into Friday. So at this point here, this is looking like organized precip across Texas. So we're talking about Friday night here going into Saturday. And that'll move eastward, assuming the GFS works out. That'll be out of the plain states by Sunday, moving into the Mississippi River Valley area, and then out to the East Coast by the start of the work week there. Okay, quick look at the stuff up in Oklahoma. We can look at that on the SPC graphics here. Now, this is the temperature, winds, and dew point here. So it's kind of a composition of a bunch of different parameters. The chart is a little bit messy. The red lines are going to be the temperature. So if we look strictly at red here, we can see the cold pool over western Oklahoma right there. So a bit of a meso high in place right there. And then if we look at the shading, like the hatched areas, there's kind of like a turquoise color in here. That's going to be the moisture. So if we look around on here, we can see the moist axis is right through here. And the precipitation kind of falls right in the center of that. With the flow being kind of weak, there's not a whole lot to really feed these storms, so they're kind of disorganized, but they are sticking to that moisture axis right there, along and just west of I-35. And let's bring this up real quick on the maps here. Let me pull down some current data. I'm taking a look at the broadcaster software. I see a bunch of dropped frames in here for earlier, but it doesn't look as bad as what we had yesterday. But I'm keeping a close eye on it, and I'll take a look at the chat there real quick and just make sure we aren't having any big issues. So right now is probably a good time while that data is coming in, and let me see. We've got Andrew here, usually one of our first ones on. We've got Mark and Fun with Tech, and Eddie W is here. And hello to Tom J. and Ryan Toomey's, Alexi, Mike from Australia, or Mick, Ron Chalfont in Southern California says they're having a good weather day there. Brett Dean lost a connection there. Not seeing any other complaints in here, though. So probably just a spotty issue there. Mike Wan and Mike Estwick checking in here. Ryan says flight crews made it back to South Florida from Dallas and OKC with no weather delays or issues. That's good. Brett Dean seeing 49 degrees in southern Jersey. Or I should say Jersey. Ryan saying sunny and warm there in Florida, 84 for a high. Michael Burrell checking in there. Mike Estwick says 77 in Denver. Got Brian Harp here. Brett Dean seeing a little bit of buffering. Yeah, that's probably what I'm seeing on my display here. I saw about 2,000 dropped frames, so I think we were stuttering there earlier, but it has not gone up yet. But I've done some test runs with it today, and I'm going to gradually try to get the bugs worked out here. Fun with Tech is here, and let's see. Ryan says El Nino weather discussion online today. I'll have to take a look at that later. And Alexi says, will El Nino make the weather severe this year? That's definitely a subject of debate. There's some evidence that with your strong El Nino years, most of the severe weather is going to concentrate along the Gulf. With your La Nina years, supposedly it moves more up into the northern plains. But before that, aside from that, I'm not really too sure we can really make a good prediction based on that alone, really. Ron says warm off South America right now. Warm oscillation there. And let's see here. Megan Sean is here. Adam Davis shooting a Horrid student film. Dorothy Tornado's here, and Megan John there in Minnesota. Mike Estwick saying 25-35 knot gust in Arvada, Lakewood, California. All right, very good. Let's take a look at this surface data here, and we can see that meso high across Oklahoma here. So this is a rough idea what the boundary looks like, and it's pretty resolvable if you have enough surface data. So there's the high pressure area right there, pretty much over El Reno, Chickasha, and you can see that divergent pattern in the wind flow there. Okay, let me see if I can bring up some GR2 data, and we can take a quick look at that. GR level 2 is coming up right now. And I think for this episode, we'll pick out, I guess maybe we'll do Frederick here. So I'm going to start the data retrieval. And it is coming in, so there's a chance this could disrupt the bandwidth temporarily. So we'll just cross our fingers here. But while it does that, we'll take a look at the rest of the data, and we can see the flow coming around to the southeast right here. So we're getting a little bit of inflow into those storms into Oklahoma. It's always a good idea to be familiar with which side is getting the inflow. So if we have our storms here like this area here is going to be getting most of the inflow, and that's the best area for propagation of those cells. GR level 2 data is still coming in here. So we're just waiting on that, but we can see dew points around 66 right here in that moisture axis. And that's about as high as I see for dew points anywhere in Texas. 66 right there at Cleburne, and 64 there at Bowie. And there's our thunderstorms across Oklahoma. Looks on the weak side. So there they are. Probably kind of high base there and disorganized. Doesn't look like any good cells really, except maybe you might get some good photography on the tail end here. And we'll take a quick look at the tilts. So we'll go up to 1.2 there and 2.3. We can see that the tops on these are about 26,000, so that indicates that not only are they kind of on the low side, but that would be an indicator that the Cape is also kind of low also. So here's the core of this cell right here. We go up to higher tilts and we can see it's pretty much vertically stacked, so definitely non-severe activity there. But it is producing a bit of a cold pool there, so anyway. Okay, let's see. What else are we going to look at? There was one more thing I was going to take a look at, and trying to remember what that was. Okay, well, I had a mental note to look at whatever that was. I forget. Oh, yeah, that's right. I was going to look at the instability. So let me go to thermodynamics here, and I'm going to bring up the surface-based Cape. So we can kind of tie that in with what we're seeing on the radar. Now, a lot of this is going to be influenced by the cold pool here, so you can't really split hairs with values here and there. But you can look at the overall field to get an idea of your values, especially out in the warm sector. And we see that most of the values here are running about 500 to 1,000. So that's definitely on the low side there. We really need about 1,000 to get into the strong thunderstorm range and 1,500 to get into severe, just as a general rule. And then picking out the most unstable Cape. Even there, not much help. We see 500 right there, and then 1,000 there. So instability is definitely on the weak side. Okay, I see we dropped a few more frames there in the past 5 minutes. So anyway, let's head into the forecast there, and let me bring up the GFS. So we have a pretty good idea what's going on at the surface, so that brings us to tomorrow. And tomorrow is Friday. We can see that the thermal gradient is roughly from the Dakotas to Nevada. So that's going to place our front kind of in this area here. So very slow progress, almost becoming quasi-stationary here through the central Rockies. Here in Texas, the Gulf is open. You can see that southerly flow coming up, but not much to trigger any thunderstorms. Then let's see, we'll go into Saturday night. By the time we do Saturday's webcast, most of the cold air mass will shift up into Canada. So again, not much progress. So we're looking at something like that for a front. You can see very slow progress. Pretty much just going stationary there in Arizona. And the Gulf still remaining open for Texas, but with the front sagging down into Kansas, we'll see precipitation chances go up there late on Saturday. Then for Sunday's webcast, things again shift to the east. So our system goes through the Great Lakes area. Here's the tail end of the front, and that'll probably just sag southward as a backdoor front through Texas. And here comes the next system coming on shore here in California. A little bit of precip behind that system. And then for Monday, we see that start to come across the Rockies. There it is right there. We can see that backdoor front looks like it's locking up right there along Interstate 40 around Little Rock and Tulsa, Oklahoma City, so some rain chances there. And then going into Tuesday, again, this system takes a very northerly track for this time of year. And we're left with the tail end of that system once again in the Vegas area here. Gulf still open in Texas, but most of the rain chances remaining up in the Central Plains. Then for Wednesday next week, there's that tail end front along Interstate 44 through Missouri into the Ohio River Valley. Some organized storms along that. The Gulf is still open here, but really nothing to set off precip down in Texas. And then once we get into Thursday and Friday, we start to see some of this shift southward. And we also get the addition of a much more potent system coming in from the Pacific here. We see very strong height falls and pressure falls out over the southern Rockies there. So there it comes. We get some warm air advection here in Texas. Dry line becomes active. We get some storms out in northwest Texas. And looks like some snow for Colorado there on Friday the 21st. So then we break out a chance of organized storms here in Texas and Oklahoma. Cold air advection coming back in behind. And then we get more of a large-scale storm event for the southeast and the Ohio Valley. Again, this is the 22nd to 23rd, and that'll move eastward over the weekend. And that probably brings us effectively to the end of that GFS run. Okay, we'll take a quick look at the chat here. Carl says CAPE is convective available potential energy. Yeah, pretty much. It's a measure of instability throughout a layer, but it's very dependent on what parcel you select. So that's the reason we have different types of CAPE measurements. We have the surface-based method, we have the most unstable, and we also have the mixed layer method. And I guess we're coming up on a possibility of doing a workshop here. I think CAPE and soundings might be a good topic for that, so maybe we can look at doing that this weekend. Okay, well, I think that's about it. All I have right here, again, just not much going on, just a little bit of thunderstorm activity in Oklahoma. But we'll see things get a little bit more active here over the next week, so hang in there. Anyway, thanks for watching, and Take care, and we'll see y'all tomorrow.